Okay, welcome back to all of you guys. Perhaps you got some nice refreshments, some good food to kind of nourish the body and the mind. So we're going to start this afternoon with meditation like we do each class. We're just going to do a guided meditation, and then I'm going to move into the rest of the Eightfold Path, helping you guys to understand this moral conduct section and the mental discipline section. So we're going to do meditation the same way as we did this morning. So if you'd like to join in the chanting, you're more than welcome to. And then I'm going to come in with the guidance. There'll be the period of time it's quiet, and then we'll just come out of that with some more chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just establishing the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะโหตังมะคะวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิส สุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสัคคะโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ All right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. All right, just like the Buddha said, everything around us is impermanent. This microphone stand has given up. It no longer will hold the microphone, so I'm going to need to hold the microphone in my hand. It doesn't have enough tension here to prop itself up. So if I put this here, so I'm going to have to take this somewhere and see if I can get something fixed in here. So I'm going to be holding this mic. Normally I'll use the mic stand, but the mic stand's impermanent, so I'm going to need to use my hands, right? Okay, so before lunch, we talked about the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path, exploring right view and right intention. This helped you to lay a foundation to understand everything else that we're going to be building upon it from this point forward. Because if you didn't understand that your mind was causing your own discontent feelings, why would you ever do anything to change anything about anything? Because if the mind thinks that it's other people that are causing your feelings, then maybe they should be here at the temple, right? Because you're perfect, right? That's what the ego is going to think is, I'm perfect. Everyone else is the problem. Okay, well, they should be here at the temple then, right? You go home and your life's going to be peaceful from this point forward as long as everybody else is fixed, right? But that's not actually true. That's not the way it actually works. So you need to be able to see with right view that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, and then build that right intention where you have the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. And now we can build upon that, because now we're going to move into the moral conduct section. Because oftentimes in the unenlightened state, when we think these painful feelings are coming from something external, we'll feel justified in our harsh and bitter speech. That animosity and resentfulness that's in the mind, you'll think that, yeah, they deserve this, right? But what you come to understand through right view is that no, all these feelings are being caused within your own mind. So now you realize that it would be very unwise to be bitter and harsh and hostile towards other people through your intentions, your speech, or your actions. So we're going to move into this moral conduct section. Whenever you're learning moral conduct in the teachings of the Buddha, what he's teaching you is the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. He's helping you to see wise decision making in the way that you interact with other people in the world. That when you make decisions wisely or unwisely, it's going to produce either wholesome results or unwholesome results. It's important to understand that he's not teaching you rules or commandments. He's not trying to convince you to do anything. Remember, he's helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. That's what the Four Noble Truths helped you to be able to see, is that your your mind needs to eliminate these cravings, this longing, yearning, and there are certain things in our speech and our actions and our livelihood that are oftentimes being motivated by craving, desire, attachment. And when you're making decisions through that, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So sometimes people think that things that they experience in their day-to-day life is from good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or maybe they think God or some entity named the universe is controlling what you experience, or sometimes people think it's other people that are causing you to experience any particular thing in your day-to-day life. And as long as you resign yourself to this type of thinking, then you're locked in. You can't do anything to change your life, because you can't change good luck or bad luck, and you can't change destiny or fate, and you can't change God, you can't change some entity called the universe, and you can't change other people. So what you come to understand is that what you're experiencing in your day-to-day life is based on decisions that you make. And when you make unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. And when you lack wisdom of this natural law, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions, because you just lack wisdom about it. So you can go into a conversation thinking you have all the best intentions in the world, and it can really blow up on you if you don't understand the moral conduct, which is the natural laws that the Buddha is helping you to be able to see. Now, some people refer to this natural law as karma. You might have heard that before. That's in the Sanskrit version of this word. The word karma is just from a different language, where the original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, and this is the word kamma that is being used. So if this translated to just one English word, I would just use that because it'd be easier for everyone, but it doesn't translate to just one English word, so I still need this word kamma to be able to help you understand this natural law. It's cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not punishments and rewards. It's not even about who's to blame or who's at fault. There's no being who's overseeing this and controlling it. It's essentially like a sequence of events, that if this thing occurs, then this is going to be the effect. Or if this action occurs, this is going to be the result. So when you understand wise, wholesome decisions around moral conduct, you can see the decisions that you're making are either wise or unwise, and you can improve your decision making around your moral conduct. So the Buddha is going to teach you through right speech, right action, and right livelihood, the types of decisions that you can make that will be wise in order to be able to help you improve what you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis in terms of your interactions with other people. So here I'm going to start off with right speech, and then I'm going to go into the others to help you understand this natural law. And then remember, you're not believing any of this stuff. You're learning, examining, you're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing in order to be able to integrate this into your day-to-day life. You're not a follower. You're not a devotee. You're an independent practitioner looking to cultivate wisdom, and the teacher is like a tour guide pointing out for you the things that you need to learn, and then that's where you investigate, examine it. By learning it intellectually, then you reflect on it to independently verify it, and then you practice it. And that's where you'll cultivate wisdom and see the real results in your day-to-day life. Because it's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. And whatever decisions you make, either wisely or unwisely, it's going to produce either wholesome karma or wholesome results, or unwholesome karma or unwholesome results. So here's what the Buddha is sharing about right speech. He's saying, in what monks is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So he's talking about 4 things here that are all based in craving, desire, attachment. If you're speaking in this way, there's some craving that's underlying that, that's motivating that type of speech. But when you train your mind to eliminate that, that'll help you to eliminate the craving, desire, attachments that are underneath of this, and it will produce more beneficial results both in your personal and professional lives. So this lying that the Buddha is referring to here and advising you to eliminate is there's an underlying craving there. There's something that the mind wants, that if it tells the truth, the mind feels like it won't get it. So it lies in order to get what it wants. We know this because when we were children, we all lied growing up. So we could see that there was something we wanted. And if we told the truth, we weren't going to get it. So we lied in order to be able to get that thing. But then once we lied, people discovered those lies. And then they found out that we weren't trustworthy, we weren't dependable, we weren't reliable. So therefore, it damaged our relationships. So you can see that it produces unwholesome results, that when we're lying, it damages our relationships. And there's that underlying craving that's motivating that. So by refraining from lying, you can get to the point where you have more harmonious relationships with the people around you. Then the Buddha talks about refraining from slander. Slander or gossip is where you're trying to diminish somebody else in order to make yourself look better. That's the craving. The mind is longing, yearning for other people to see you in a certain way. And now the mind thinks, if I can diminish this person, then I can look better. It's kind of like walking into a dark room and you're trying to put out somebody else's candle because the mind thinks that my candle will shine brighter if I put out their candle. But in reality, if we're in a dark room, we would like everybody's candle to shine bright, right? So putting out other people's candle isn't going to help you. Instead, it's actually harming you, because in this situation where you're causing harm to someone's reputation by slandering or gossiping them, they're now going to potentially cause you harm, right? Harm's going to come to you because now they're going to want to maybe beat you up or even murder you. That's the height of this, that you can actually be murdered for damaging someone's reputation. This is where you see that investigative reporters go on TV and they might talk about a particular person, and next thing you know that they're dead. They've been murdered, right? I'm not explaining to you the way the world should be. I'm explaining to you the way the world is. And if we gossip and slander people, we're causing harm to their reputation, and now harm's going to come to us. At the very least, that if you're gossiping and slandering with people and you're talking to people in this way, they're going to get used to you gossiping and slandering. And now when your back is turned, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you. And if you don't like that, then you're going to need to stop that. You're going to need to stop doing it yourself so that other people aren't doing that about you. But even when you're enlightened, people can still gossip and slander about you. But the thing is that your mind is unaffected by it, that you're not affected by other people's gossip and slander. So you would like to eliminate this gossip and slander so that you're not experiencing people coming at you and trying to beat you up or murder you or things of this nature. Then refraining from harsh speech. Again, there's an underlying craving here that when your tone, your tempo, and your word choice is harsh and bitter and hostile, there's something you want. And the mind thinks, if I can be harsh and bitter to this person, I will scare them, I will fear them, and now they will do things my way. The mind's trying to get that craving fulfilled. So by speaking gently, this is going to help promote better relationships for you. And you'll see your mind will be at ease. And you're going to need to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. That's what's going to help you with this. So eliminating harsh speech is what the Buddha is advising. And you can see, again, if you independently verify this, in situations where you've been harsh and bitter and hostile, it's damaged relationships. It's produced unwholesome results. Because remember, these are the natural laws. They're affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. So whenever you spoke harshly, it damaged your relationships. You might have even lost a job if you were harsh and bitter and hostile with your coworkers or your boss, right, or your customers. Then frivolous speech. What this is like if you've ever done this or someone has been around you where you're just talking and talking and talking and talking. It's like yada, 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 yada. It's like you're not really having a conversation. It's like broadcasting, right? It might be 5, 10, 15 minutes of just one person just talking, right? And if you did this is an underlying craving there where your mind's just craving to talk. You're not having a conversation with someone. You're just craving to talk. And the more that you do this, people are just going to tune you out and they're going to be disinterested in talking with you. And you're not going to be very influential in your relationships. So by focusing on these 4, where you're eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, this is going to promote the best relationships for you, and you won't experience any of these harms that are coming back to you. And this is where you might hang out for a while. When you're first getting started with the moral conduct, you might just be working on these 4 to eliminate those. But as you do, then you can move deeper into what's called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. This is a deeper level teaching that plugs into the Eightfold Path. And this is ultimately where you would like to get to, is where you're actually practicing at this level of the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. This is where the Buddha teaches you to speak at the proper time. What you say is true. gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And each one of these have certain aspects behind it. So for example, speaking at the proper time, there's 3 aspects to it. One is making sure that you're not interrupting people, because when you're interrupting people, there's a craving there. The mind's long and yearning. It really wants to talk. You're just listening to the person, and you just can't hold back, and you just butt into the conversation, and you just start talking over top of somebody. That's because of the craving. And you don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you're interrupting other people, it's going to cause some difficulties in your relationships. If they're getting angry, it's their mind that's causing that, right? But they don't know that, right? So one of the things that the Buddha is teaching you is how to navigate the world with unenlightened beings. Because when they're getting angry, they're going to attribute those feelings to you. They're going to push you to the side. They're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're going to put their expectations on you and try to control you. So by you ensuring that you're not interrupting people, you can have better relationships with people. Then the other aspect of speaking the proper time is making sure it's the proper time for your mind. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're agitated or annoyed, this isn't the proper time for you to speak, because at this point, all that's going to come out is bitterness and harshness and hostility out of your mouth and in your speech, and now you're going to damage your relationship. So you'd like to make sure it's the proper time for your mind. You might need to step away for a few minutes or a few hours or even a few days before you have that conversation that you need to have. And then the third aspect of this is making sure it's the proper time for the other person, right? If their mind is bitter and harsh and hostile, if they're upset, they're not going to take in what it is you need to say and the things that you need to share. So it's better to just step away from the conversation. And if you are comfortable to not have craving, desire, attachment, this should be very easy for you, right? If you get a notice in the mail that you haven't paid your rent and you're going to get kicked out in 3 days if you don't pay your rent. Well, if your life partner or your roommate comes home and you jumped on them right away, that's because of your craving, right? Instead, if you understand this teaching, speak at the proper time, let them come in, put their bag down, take off their shoes, get some water, get some food. Maybe they've been home for 30 minutes, an hour or so. Hey, honey, is this a good time to talk about something important? And if they say no, it's not a good time, it was a pretty hectic day at work, if you don't have a craving, you'll be completely fine with that. You'll say, okay, how about tomorrow? Can we speak tomorrow? Maybe we'll have a conversation about this tomorrow, right? So you'd be completely fine. But if they said yes, then maybe it's a good time for you to go ahead and talk. So you're going to need to make sure you're speaking at the proper time, that you're not interrupting, that your mind is prepared to speak, and the other person's mind is prepared to speak. Then speaking the truth, this is the same thing that we talked about up here with lying, so it's just kind of duplicated down here. Speaking gently, same thing up here. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You're going to need to pay a lot of attention to this. And if you speak multiple languages, you're going to need to pay attention in all those different languages as you're interacting with people. You know, in the English language, you know, we've used to use words like please and thank you and sir and ma'am and things like this. And those have kind of like fallen by the wayside in a lot of cases, but you don't have to do that. You can actually bring in that into your speech. You can refer to people in polite, kind, friendly, respectful ways so that people know that that's what you're doing. In the Thai language, we have all kinds of ways to talk and use extra words to ensure that people know that we're being polite and kind and friendly and respectful. So whatever languages you speak, you're going to need to look at that and figure out how you can be gentle, your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. Then what beneficial is about the methods of how you speak. This is talked about up here as well with frivolous speech. It's not about the topics that you're talking about. It's not like there's a list of approved topics somewhere. It's more about the method of how you speak, that you would like to be clear and concise and precise in the way that you speak, because then people won't have to work so hard to understand what it is that you're sharing, because you're being clear and concise and precise in the way that you're speaking, and now people can understand you more and more. And then you'd like to wrap all of this in a mind of loving kindness, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You would like to wrap all your conversations in that. The opposite of that would be inner hate, right? You're not interested in speaking through inner hate. Okay, so what we're talking about here is these 5 factors and making sure that you're practicing these gradually bringing your practice up to that. You're going to find it the most challenging in the relationships that you're the closest. So like life partners, parents, siblings, children, people that you're really close to, you'll find it more challenging here, like your parents and stuff like that, because you have the strongest attachments in those relationships and the cravings. But over time, you can eliminate those cravings, desires, attachments, and you can learn to speak with them in this way. But you'll find it the most challenging in those relationships. So you're going to need to take your time, be patient, and gradually bring your practice up to that. The way that I used to do this is I used to review these in the morning. I would look at them kind of maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes on my way out the door. And now I would go have my meetings and my conversations and all this kind of stuff. And then at lunchtime, I would look at them again and I would kind of reflect on my day. I missed this one. I was interrupting people. I shouldn't have been doing that. I need to work on that one some more. I could have been more gentle over here, right? So you kind of look at your morning and you figure out where could I have improved. But then you also can look at things of how you did well in that morning, right? And then in the afternoon, you can now apply these 5 factors during that period of time too. And then maybe in the evening, you look at them again, right? So gradually, slowly but surely, over multiple days and weeks, you can gradually integrate this into your day-to-day life by refreshing your memory of what these are. Because remember, you're not interested in believing these. You can independently verify this. If you look at all 5 of these factors, look at conversations that you were in that didn't go so well, that they ended maybe with unwholesome results. You can see that you and or the other person wasn't speaking in this way, even if you missed just one of these. Because remember, these are the natural laws. They're affecting you whether you're aware of them or not. So if you weren't practicing these 5, then the conversation had a potential of not going so well, right? But then also look at conversations that have gone well, because you've had conversations that have gone well, right? You and or the other person was practicing these 5 factors. Maybe when you guys went to lunch, I know a lot of us went out to lunch together. You guys were probably having some really nice conversations. You were probably practicing these 5 factors of well-spoken speech, right? And that's why the conversation went so well, because these natural laws are affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. So in the past, there's been some situations where you're practicing them without even realizing it. But now what you would like to do, once you see that these are the truth, is start to integrate them into your life where you're practicing them more and more. And then you'll be able to see that they are the truth because you're practicing them closely and you're seeing more and more wholesome results. So now you can consciously practice these 5 factors of well-spoken speech at all times, understanding it's going to take gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress to gradually bring your practice up to this point. So what we're talking about here is establishing something called barami. This is a Thai word. In Thailand, there's individuals who have barami. What this means is the one who people listen to, right? If you have barami, you might be some village elders in your village, and people know that you're very successful in life, and they look to you as an influential person in your community, and you can kind of see that people go to these individuals for help and guidance in the village, that people know that these are successful people. You can go talk to them if you have problems in your career or your personal life or anything like this. They have barami. They're the ones who people listen to. And when I say they're successful in life, I don't mean rich and wealthy necessarily. Right? What I mean by success is that they have harmonious relationships. That's what it means to be successful. Just about anybody can go outside and make a bunch of money, right? But to have harmonious relationships, that takes a lot of wisdom to be able to do that. So if you have barami, you've established where you are the one who people listen to, not because you went out and actively chose to do that, but people on their own are choosing to come to you for guidance, and you're influential in the community. So the way that people establish barami is by speaking with these 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So if you're interested in being influential in your personal or professional life, if you learn to speak with these where you're not causing harm to other people, more and more people will consider you to be wise because they can see that you're not causing harm to others, and more people will come to you and be interested in receiving advice and suggestions about their life, right? So you can actually become the one who people listen to within your community because you're speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and now you have barami because people are coming to you and considering you to be someone successful in the world. So you can reflect on this and build these up gradually, slowly but surely in your practice, because you're going to need to commit these to your memory and understand how to practice them. And that's where you'll see that the teachings of the Buddha truly work. Because that anger and frustration that you're dealing with, being bitter and harsh and hostile to other people, it's not solving anything because they're not the ones who are causing that. It's coming from your own mind. So being bitter and harsh and hostile to people isn't actually fixing anything. It's just causing damage in your relationships. So when you start speaking this way, this is what's going to help improve your relationships. Sometimes we think the way to improve our relationships is to get other people to change. But you'll see that if you start changing the way you interact in the world, the people around you will start changing. Your life partners, your parents, your siblings, your children, your neighbors, your boss, your coworkers, they will slowly start interacting with you in different ways than they do right now. But it's going to mean that you need to decide to implement these kinds of things in your day-to-day life. So as you're learning these 5 factors and you're bringing them up and running more and more in your life, there's going to probably be a period of time over the next few months where you're in situations and you can't remember what the 5 factors of well-spoken speech are. Until you get them really refined and memorized in your mind, you're going to be in situations where you're going to maybe need to speak and you can't remember the 5 factors. So I share in this book all these 5 factors in detail, and I explain them with examples. So that's why it can help you to get this book so that you can understand what I'm teaching you there from the teachings of the Buddha. But in those situations where you can't remember what these 5 factors are, if you can remember to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this will help you. Right? Ultimately, you need to know the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. That's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. But in certain situations, if you can just remember polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this will really help you. So you can maybe keep that in mind for the next few months until you get the 5 factors of well-spoken speech really refined and developed in your day-to-day life. And you're going to see other details about speech in there as well. Now, while the Buddha referred to this as right speech, that was really the only thing that was going on during his lifetime was speech. Right? But nowadays we have all different kinds of ways of communicating with people. So we might consider this to be right communication, right? Because if you were like really angry and frustrated and you were going over to your keyboard on your computer and you were pounding out an email, that's not the proper time to communicate. So the Buddha talks about the proper time to speak, right? But we would like to have the proper time to communicate, because if we're pounding on our keyboard trying to get that anger out in an email and we press send, you're putting harm out into the world, so therefore harm is going to come back to you. So maybe you hit save on that email instead of send, right? Or say you went to a job interview and you really knocked it out of the park, and these people are really interested in hiring you, and now they check your social media and you're bitter and harsh and hostile in your social media. They're probably not going to hire you, right? So you would like all your communication, whether it's text messages, emails, voice messages, social media posts, all of this stuff with right communication, with right speech, and those 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Okay, so this is the right speech. Then the 4th factor is right action, where the Buddha is teaching you not to cause harm through your bodily actions. Because anytime you cause harm through your bodily actions, this harm is going to come back to you. So here he says, in what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So he's talking about 3 very big, impactful actions here. And these are actually things from the animal existences. When we're in the animal realm, we tend to kill, we tend to steal, we tend to have sexual misconduct. We're going around having sex with lots of individuals, right? So the Buddha is helping you to become this better and better human being, realizing that these things are all going to cause harm and that this harm is going to come back to you. But he's not giving you an exhaustive list of every single bodily action that you could potentially do that would cause harm, because you're going to need to use your higher consciousness to be able to understand that and figure this out. Because notice he doesn't say don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, But if you understand right action, you know that that's unwise, right? Because the cause and effect, or the action and result of that, is if you punch someone in the face, they're probably going to punch you back, right? Or at the very least, maybe they pull a knife or a gun or something like this, or maybe their friends or family come and attack you. You don't know, right? So it would be very unwise to punch someone in the face. But the Buddha's not listing out every little thing here. He doesn't say, don't drag your suitcase through the aisle of a plane, right? Because planes didn't even exist during his lifetime. Because if you dragged your suitcase through the aisle of a plane and ran over people's feet and bumped into their knees, you're going to have some difficulties in that situation. People are going to start getting bitter and harsh and hostile with you, right? So you're going to need to apply this in multiple situations. You can see right now, you're just sitting in one spot. You're not causing any harm with your body. That's why no harm is coming to you. Whereas if you were sitting next to the person next to you and poking them in the eyes, right, there's probably going to be some harm that comes to you in that situation. Maybe not in this environment, but probably in another environment, right? If you start poking people in the eyes, it's going to cause harm with your bodily actions, so therefore harm is going to come back to you, right? So you need to be able to see that there's a lot more than just these three. Now, when the Buddha is talking about these, if you study the 5 precepts, which I teach in other programs and other courses, the Buddha is going to give you more illuminating language on this. It's in volume 1, chapter 7. You can see his words, because here he's just giving you very basic, very broad understanding. He's saying refraining from taking life, but it's actually much more detailed than that. And he's talking about refrain from taking what is not given. Again, it's more detailed than that. And then here he's saying refrain from sexual misconduct. Well, what is sexual misconduct? So in the 5 precepts, he explains it. He talks about having sex with minors, having sex against someone's consent, like if you were raping somebody or something like that. He talks about going outside of existing relationships that you currently have, or luring somebody out of their relationships if they're in a committed relationship, things like this. So you can see the details there, and that'll be helpful for you because you're going to need that level of detail. So I've taught that many times, and it's been recorded on our YouTube channel and other places like our podcast, and you can see it in the book. So I would encourage you to study the 5 precepts to be able to understand this in more detail, because this is just a very general way of referring to it. Because remember, the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching where he's pointing to other teachings, and certain teachings integrate into it. So I'll give you a heads up on this sexual conduct one, misconduct, because oftentimes people think like that must include same gender relationships, right? No, it doesn't, because there's no harm being caused by 2 people that are loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex with each other. So the Buddha never taught that same gender relationships would be causing harm, because you can see that 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults, they're not actually causing harm to anyone. So where you might hear people talk about those kinds of things, the Buddha never taught that. And he was aware of it because it was going on during his lifetime too. There's never been a situation where every man had sex with a woman and every woman had sex with a man. And the reason why we know that is because of the universal truth of impermanence, right? It's not possible. If every man and every woman had sex with someone of the opposite gender, that would be permanence. But we understand the universal truth of impermanence. So ever since the beginning of human history, humans have had sex with the same gender or opposite gender. It's normal. So if you're someone who prefers same gender relationships, or you know someone who does, this is completely normal, and you're not causing any harm to anybody. Now, when people have a craving for everybody to have sex with someone of the opposite gender, and they're not getting their craving fulfilled, their anger will arise and they will be bitter and harsh and hostile. But where that's coming from is their lack of wisdom, or their unknowing of true reality of something like the universal truth of impermanence. So this is how wise the Buddha was, that 2,500 years ago, he already understood that same gender relationships don't cause harm. Where today we have people in the world that don't understand that. More and more, we're seeing that people are starting to understand that. But this is how wise this man truly was. 2,500 years ago, he already understood, right? Like even just 50 years ago, there wasn't so many people that understood this particular wisdom, but the Buddha did understand it. So that's where you can see how wise he was. So right action is a lot more than just these 3. These are just 3 big, impactful ones to help you understand. And you're going to need to study the 5 precepts to be able to understand this more with the language of the Buddha. You'll see places where he talks about substances that cause heedlessness as an action that can cause harm, because when you're putting substances into the body that are causing a lack of attention, that are causing a lack of mindfulness or lack of carelessness in the mind, this is going to cause harm, because now your mind isn't so sharp and you're not able to make wise decisions. So he talks about that as a bodily action that would cause harm, as well as gambling and other things like this. You'll see him talk about a few, but he never gives you an exhaustive list, because you need to figure this out. If you understand that causing harm with your body is going to produce harm to others, and now harm will come back to you, you can learn to eliminate that. Then he teaches you about a right livelihood, because if you're causing harm through your livelihood, then this harm is going to come back to you. What a livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. Whereas if you choose to sustain your life off of causing harm to others, that harm will come to you. So the Buddha here in the Eightfold Path, he says something very general and very broad. He says, in what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. So this is very general and very broad, because his teachings about right livelihood are in other places, and he's just essentially pointing to that. When he talks about noble disciple, what he's talking about there is someone who's practicing his teachings deeply. That's what he means by a noble disciple. So someone who's practicing his teachings deeply have given up wrong livelihood, and they keep themselves by right livelihood. So he gives you these 5 livelihoods that would cause harm to other people if you were doing any of these 5 livelihoods. Business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons, because all of these are designed to cause harm to other people. And what you would like to be able to do is make sure that you're not practicing one of these, because it's going to cause harm, and this harm is going to come back to you. But once again, it's not about belief. You need to independently verify this, right? You're not going to just go out and blindly follow whatever is being said in this particular book, right? You need to be able to independently verify it. So let's just take one of these, like substances that cause heedlessness. Okay, so if I was on the street corner selling heroin or crystal methamphetamine or cocaine into the neighborhood, I'm causing harm. These people are getting addicted to this substance. They're bringing me money, and that's how I'm sustaining my life, off of causing harm to these people. But now, standing on the street corner, I can get beat up, I can get robbed, I can get murdered, I can get arrested, I can get addicted to these substances myself. This is all the harm that's coming to me as a result of causing harm in this community, right? So you can see clearly that it's unwise to stand on the street corner and sell illicit drugs into the community. But this is the natural law of karma. You know, in most places, it's illegal to stand on the corner and sell illicit drugs. But if you understand that this is a law that's functioning at a much higher level, that you understand that you're not just following the human laws. The laws of a government are imperfect. They're never going to be perfect, right? No matter how much we aspire for them to be created and administered fairly and equally among all people, because human beings are prone to error, we're going to see that there are going to be errors in the way that these laws are applied in different situations. So it's always wise to aspire to apply them more equally and more fairly to all people, but we can understand that the laws of society are imperfect. But this natural law of karma, it's functioning at all times, and it's essentially functioning exactly the way it needs to function. It's the most unbiased teacher you will ever find, because it's going to show you in every situation where you're making wise decisions and unwise decisions. So this substances that cause heedlessness, that includes things like drugs and alcohol, right? So our government might say, yeah, we're going to arrest you if you stand on that corner and sell crystal methamphetamine into the community. But hey, if you'd like to go work at that liquor store, yeah, go work at that liquor store. We're not going to arrest you for that. Go ahead. But if you understand the natural law of karma, you might realize that's really unwise, because these are the places that tend to get robbed, people get beat up, people get murdered in these kinds of situations. At the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele on a day-to-day basis. If you're working at that bar or that liquor store, people are going to come in there intoxicated, right? And now you have to deal with intoxicated people. how could you get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life if you're having to regularly deal with intoxicated people, right? So you would like to get to a point where you understand that these natural laws that the Buddha is teaching you is at a much higher level than the human laws. So if you're following and practicing the natural law of karma, you'll never have issues with your government because you're going to be practicing a much higher law than what they've created in their day-to-day laws of society. So these are the 5 trades that if you did them, they would cause harm, and therefore harm's going to come back to you. But now the Buddha gives you guidance on how to conduct your livelihood so that you can have success professionally. Because ultimately you'd like to get to a job where you have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation, and you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing day in and day out. But if you're doing any of these kinds of things, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So for example, scheming. If I was a politician, that's not a livelihood that causes harm. It's not one of those 5. It's not business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness or poisons. But if I was corrupt, like if I was a mayor of a town or if I was a lawmaker and I was corrupt and doing backhanded things, maybe 10 or 15 years into my career, people find out about this and now they don't want to reelect me. And now I'm going to have difficulty sustaining my life because I've based my life off of this career as a politician. And now when people find out I'm corrupt, it's going to be very hard to sustain my life this way. Or flattery. What this is when you're giving insincere comments just to try to get people to buy things from you. If you've ever been in that situation, you might have been really turned off by that, right? Like if say you walked into a store and someone's like, wow, that shirt looks really nice on you. It's a wonderful color. It really makes your eyes look wonderful. You know, I've got these great earrings over here that are going to really go well with that shirt. Would you like to come look at these earrings? Right? You're probably like, probably don't even feel comfortable going into the store. You might want to turn around and leave. It just feels a little bit icky, right? So if you were just flattering people with insincere comments just to get them to buy things from you, you're not going to be able to build your wholesome karma and be successful in your day-to-day profession. Hinting is like being unclear when you're communicating in your job or your profession. So if all of us were on a project team and we needed to go brief the boss about the project that we're working on, we're not interested in just hinting around. We would like to be clear and concise so the boss knows what it is that we're working on and where we're at in the project. Belittling is like when you're degrading or diminishing people, like your coworkers, your customers, your business partners, your competition, where you're degrading and diminishing them. If you were belittling people, even your competition, it's not going to look good for you. Sometimes people think that's the way to be successful in business, is to make your competition look bad. Right? But you're not interested in doing that because your customers are hearing that, and it's actually a reflection of you that you're trying to diminish your competition. So if somebody asks you a question about your competition, you can just answer it easily. You can say, I'm not quite sure what they do 100%, but this is what I can do for you. Here's how I can help you. Right? And then they're either going to make a decision to go forward with your product or service or not. Right? So you don't need to diminish people in your livelihood. Your customers, your coworkers, your business partners, your competition. You're not interested in having any negative relationships whatsoever. What pursuing gain with gain is, this is where you only care about the money, that you don't really care about the product or the service. You're just going to this job in order to make money, and that's all you care about. Well, if you do that initially, you're probably going to feel great because you're getting this big fat paycheck, but over time that is going to fade away. That money's not going to be so important to you anymore, and now you're going to be unmotivated going to this job. You're going to be dragging yourself to work each day. If you've ever had a job like that, you probably despised it. When the alarm clock went off in the morning, you're like, do I got to go to that place again? Right? So you're not interested in doing that kind of thing, because how could you get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life if you have to drag yourself to work every single day? So what the Buddha is teaching you how to do is to get to a livelihood where you can have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation, where you can enjoy the work that you do. That's kind of like a foreign concept to people, to actually enjoy the work that you do, right? That's what you can actually get to, is where you enjoy thoroughly what you're doing, that it doesn't even feel like work, that you enjoy this work so much that even if you didn't get paid for it, you would still do it. You enjoy it that much. And of course, you're going to need to get paid for it because you need to buy certain things for your life, but you would like to get to the point where you enjoy this work so much that even if you didn't get paid for it, you would still do it. There's some great examples of this here in Thailand. Like if you go around and you look at how people work, you can see people doing all kinds of things that they thoroughly enjoy, right? I like to use this example. You'll see sometimes somebody standing on the street corner selling mango and sticky rice, right? And maybe this elderly lady or this man or this family got up early in the morning. They went out into their mango grove, picking their mangoes, selecting each one, checking if they're ripe or not, putting them in a basket, cleaning them up, bringing them to the market, making their sticky rice and their coconut milk, and they just enjoy slicing those mangoes and serving it up to you and collecting their 40 baht with a big old smile on their face, right? They just thoroughly enjoy giving you that mango and sticky rice. They can't imagine doing anything else in the world but making that mango and sticky rice for you. So what you need to be able to do if you're still working is find your mango and sticky rice, right? What is your mango and sticky rice? What are you going to thoroughly enjoy doing each and every day that it doesn't even feel like work anymore? Because that's what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do, and that's where the peace and that's where the joy is. Whereas if you're dragging yourself to work each day, you're not in potentially the right livelihood, or maybe you're not in the proper company or the proper role. So if you're in a job right now that you really don't care for and you really don't like it, you might decide to look at these teachings closer, because what I've just described to you is what's called the first fold of purification. This is what you typically work on initially, but then there's a second fold of purification beyond this, right? And you'll find that in volume 12, chapter 14. And we have the books here, they're online. So if you're in a current livelihood that you don't particularly care for, maybe you're in between jobs and you need to look for a new livelihood, you might look at volume 12, chapter 14. And that's where you're going to see the Buddha's full teachings on right livelihood and how to get to that livelihood that you thoroughly enjoy. Because you need to find your mango and sticky rice, and then you'll just thoroughly enjoy it. You can't imagine doing anything else in the world but that particular thing. Okay, so this is the right livelihood. So just a little bit of a summary here is there's right speech, or we might refer to this as right communication, where you're not causing harm through your conduct, whether it's verbal, whether it's text, chat, post, emails, all of this should be harmless, where you eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And then you go deeper and you speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Okay, so you'd like to have all your communication with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and gradually build your practice up, understanding it's going to take time. And in relationships where you're the closest to people, that's going to be the most challenging. Then you would like to work on right action, making sure that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions, right? Making sure that you're looking at how you navigate the world. If you watch Thai people in large crowds, there's some people who practice this so closely that they will actually hold their loose clothing up against their body as they walk through a crowd. They're not even interested in their loose clothing knocking into somebody else. That's how closely some people actually practice this. Whether you choose to do that or not is up to you, but you'll notice that about Thai people when they navigate through a large crowd. So you'd like all your bodily actions to be harmless. Then there's right livelihood. This is ensuring that you're not having business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. And then you eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain, because that's going to get you to the first fold of purification, where you can start enjoying your job and you can start having ambition and enthusiasm and motivation. But then eventually you're going to need to get to the second fold of purification, which is in volume 12, chapter 14. So do you guys have any questions on the moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path? For those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. You have a question, Martha? Yeah? You're going to get a mic?
David, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
For that slide where you had all, you had like wisdom and then moral conduct, yeah, that one. Maybe you'll talk about, but like, what are the connections between the wisdom to the conduct to the discipline?
Yeah, so the wisdom informs you how your moral conduct has been unwise because we thought that our harsh speech, we were kind of vindicated, right? We felt like justified in being harsh and bitter to people because we thought that they are the ones who are causing us to be angry or frustrated. So when we understand the wisdom section, then right away we're like, oh, I got to improve this moral conduct. I got to fix this. So that's where that helps you to do that. But then you're not going to be able to actually practice this moral conduct until you learn the mental discipline, because that's what's going to help you put the moral conduct into place. So instead of like mastering one of these before you move on to the others, you're actually doing all 8 at the same time. One of the ways to think about this is if you had like a speaker system and you were trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speaker system, you would kind of tweak these 8 individual dials and you'd be constantly tweaking them, trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. And the same thing's true about your mind, that you would like to tweak all of these 8 dials. What the Buddha typically did when students first started learning with him is he would first teach them right view, because you need that at the very beginning. Every student he would teach right view at the beginning. Then he would teach you the moral conduct. Because the moral conduct is like if you're spewing oil all over the world, like if you have a pipe and you're spewing oil all over the world because this pipe has burst, you're not going to go clean up the oil spill first. You're going to shut down the pipe, right? So this is shutting down the unwholesome moral conduct, because if you keep spewing that all over the world, it's just producing more and more unwholesome results for you. So he would teach you that second, right? And then would come the mental discipline. Right? Oftentimes people are spending so much time in meditation and they don't understand that that's only one aspect of one factor. And that's why people oftentimes aren't getting to enlightenment, because they're not understanding the sequencing here and what you really need to be doing. It's not just meditation. So meditation would actually come later for the Buddha, where nowadays people usually teach that first. And that's why people aren't necessarily experiencing enlightenment and understanding what they need to do. So it goes right view and then moral conduct, and then you start practicing the mental discipline. But we can do all of this stuff at the same time, kind of tweaking these 8 dials individually. Mm-hmm.
I have a question regarding right livelihood. Mm-hmm. Let's say a case where someone finds their mango and sticky rice in a profession that is not harmful itself.
That is harmful, or
that it is not for someone else or for the environment, like finance. But then this person works for an institution, for an organization or companies that are harmful to people or the environment. I mean, extreme cases would be you manage the finances of a narco organization. Definitely there will be some karma coming against you. I mean, you will be producing a harmful karma. But how about if you have you work for the finance department in a company like Coca-Cola or Monsanto or Tyson that are known to cause harm to the environment or to people based on their targeted customers, etc. Would that be considered wrong livelihood or not? Or where would you be impacted by the natural rule of karma in those cases?
Yeah, so if you're doing any of these things, so your example of like a finance person in a narco organization, right? Their job there is supporting substances that cause heedlessness. So now they're going to experience the results of that. That's where now the police are going to want to come arrest you. You could get killed, right? A rival cartel could actually kill you because they know you're the one running the finances and helping the company do so many things. So they might try to kill you now because you're part of this organization. So you're still having a business in substances that cause heedlessness. Even though your role in the company is finances, you're still, the ultimate goal of this company is to sell substances that cause heedlessness. So that's why you would like to look at these kinds of things. Some of the other examples you used, like Coca-Cola and stuff like this, like you need to look at that, because even caffeine is substances that cause heedlessness, and you need to decide, is this something that you would like to contribute to? Or like if you're working for a company that's doing environmentally harmful things, you need to decide for yourself, is this a company that you would like to continue to work for, because now as that company is getting a bad stigma, and now it's harming you, because when you go try to find another job and people look at that company and has a poor reputation, now you coming out of that company, they might not be interested in hiring you. So you could be damaging your reputation by choosing to work for a company who's known to be causing harm in the world. So it does affect you, and you need to decide for yourself, like, if you would like to continue to do this or not, because it would be better to go, if you're doing a finance work, for example, is to go find an organization that you feel better about and that is doing wholesome things in the world, because then as you build up your career, you'll have a better and better reputation in the community to be able to find increasing opportunities for yourself. You're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any questions online here. Remember, you guys can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions there. Okay, so let's go on to the mental discipline section, because this is what's going to help you put all this other stuff into place. Without the mental discipline section, it would be very challenging to ever practice the moral conduct. So here's the words of the Buddha on right effort. He says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort." So there's 4 things that he's teaching you here, which is part of right effort. And I've broken this down on this next page here. I'm going to give you examples, okay? So he's talking about 4 things. He's talking about preventing unwholesome mental states from coming into the mind. He's talking about abandoning unwholesome mental states that are currently in the mind. He's talking about developing in the mind wholesome mental states that are not currently there. And he's talking about supporting and encouraging and maintaining wholesome mental states that are currently in the mind. So you're going to need to apply the effort to do this, right? These things aren't going to just happen naturally. So you're going to need to apply the effort to prevent unwholesome mental states from arising. And an example of that is that you probably don't have an interest in killing another human being in your mind right now. That's probably the farthest thing from your mind right now, is killing another human being, right? And what the Buddha is saying is any kind of unwholesome mental state like that is not currently in your mind, prevent it from ever coming into your mind. Apply the effort, because you know this is going to cause harm. Then any unwholesome mental states that are currently in your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to abandon those. And some examples might be, if you were in an existing relationship and you were having craving to have sex with somebody outside of your relationship, you're going to need to eliminate that from your mind, because you know it's going to cause harm if you go outside your relationship and have sex with someone else. Or say you're angry or frustrated or having these other discontent feelings. Those are unwholesome qualities that are coming up in your mind, and you're going to need to apply the effort to abandon those out of the mind. Then there's certain wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind that you're going to need to cultivate in your mind. You're going to learn about generosity, where generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. And this is going to help your mind to let go. It's training your mind to let go, let go, let go. And you're going to need to frequently be practicing generosity every day. Right? Your time, effort, energy, and resources. This is what's going to help train your mind to let go. Well, if you know that you're not very generous and you find it difficult to share with other people, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this generosity into your mind. Or maybe you lack compassion. Maybe what compassion is compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others, right? So the opposite extremes of this would be like you were indifferent. You could care less. When somebody's suffering and having difficulties, like, I don't care. That's their life, not my life. That's their karma. Who cares? right? That would be a lack of compassion. But the other side of this would be where you're worried and you're having anxiety over every little thing that's happening. Oh my goodness, there's homeless people in the world. Oh, they don't have food. Oh, I feel so bad and miserable, right? So these are the two opposite sides of the spectrum. The middle way is compassion, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. Whether you choose to do something about it or not is a different question, but you would like to have the mental state of compassion, where you have the concern for the misfortune of others. Okay, so if you know that you don't have this in your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this into the mind, right? That's bringing a wholesome quality into the mind that's not currently there. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. But then there's certain wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind, but you're going to need to bring them to full growth, full perfection, and full development. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do this. A good example of this one might be loving kindness. You probably have a certain amount of loving kindness in your mind, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, but it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. That's why you still get angry. You still get frustrated at people. And maybe you say things or do things that are unwise in those situations because that anger is coming up, and now maybe you're bitter and harsh and hostile to these people. That's because the loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. So you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. Or say sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is the opposite of envy or jealousy, right? So maybe in certain situations, someone's like, hey, I'm going to go to Thailand next year. And you're like, oh, I've been to Thailand. That's a great place. There's this lady on the corner that sells mango and sticky rice. She's got some really great food. You might decide to check that lady out, right? Or they got these really good Thai massages. You'll enjoy it so much. Oh, have a good time, right? You might have sympathetic joy, where you're having joy for their success, even though you didn't contribute to it. But now maybe you're at work and you're applying for a new promotion. They have a new job that's opened up, and maybe your coworkers are applying for that same job too, and maybe they get the job instead of you, and they come by your desk kind of gloating with all this conceit, like, hey, I got the job, I got that new job, and now maybe you're jealous and you're envious. That's because your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. So you're going to need to apply the effort to rise that up in the mind, where you can have joy for their success, even though you didn't contribute to it. Okay, so this is right effort, where you're preventing unwholesome qualities from arising in the mind, where you're abandoning unwholesome qualities that have arisen in the mind, where you're producing or developing certain wholesome qualities that are not yet in the mind. You're bringing those into the mind, or you're maintaining and supporting and encouraging wholesome qualities that are currently in the mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to do this. The way that I taught this to my young son is kick out the unwholesome and bring in the wholesome. That's what you're looking to do, and apply the effort to do that. You wouldn't be able to practice right effort without the next one. The next one is called right mindfulness. You need right mindfulness in order to practice right effort. So here's the words of the Buddha on this. He says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So he's talking about four things here. He's talking about body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, and mental objects as mental objects. So he's talking about the four foundations of mindfulness. But before we talk about that, let's just talk about mindfulness in general. What you need to develop is awareness of mind. You need to be aware of your thoughts and your ideas, your mental states, what's going through your mind. Generally, in the unenlightened state, we don't tend to have awareness of our mind. I don't know about you, but I was just kind of plowing through the world, knocking down trees, burning up the forest, couldn't really care less who was experiencing what. It was all about me. It was very selfish, right? I was going through the forest, knocking down the trees and burning up the forest. And I was like, I smell smoke. Where's that smoke coming from? And I look behind me and there's all these trees knocked down. I'm like, who knocked down all the trees? Right? It was me, right? I'm the one who knocked down all the trees. I didn't even realize it. I smell all this smoke, right? So you need to have this awareness of your mind, like what's going on within your own mind. That's something that you're going to need to cultivate. And oftentimes this word mindfulness has made its way into modern conversations, and you might hear people using it from time to time, but they're typically not using it in the same way that the Buddha used it. How they choose to use it is up to them, but you're going to need to get more and more in touch with how the Buddha used it in order to be able to practice it. What people are often saying is they might say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? What they're saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table, right? They're not saying it the way that the Buddha taught it, which is awareness of mind. You need to have this awareness of what's going on in your mind. And you might hang out there for a few months where you're just working on that, right? But then you would like to get to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is where you have awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What the Buddha is cluing you into here is the life cycle that your discontentedness is going to take as it's arising. So when you have a craving, desire, attachment in your mind, and you experience contact through your 6 sense bases of your eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself, when you experience contact, you're going to see that as either agreeable or you're going to see it as disagreeable. And if it's agreeable, it's triggering one of your cravings, you're going to get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation. If it triggers one of your cravings and you're getting painful feelings, you're going to get the anger, frustration, and all these other feelings. But before you get a feeling, there's some bodily sensation that you're experiencing first that you may or may not even be aware of yet, right? This is like an early warning system alerting you that you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated, right? It might be tingling in the body, rising up to the chest. It might be tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is the bodily sensations associated with anger that is about to arise. Even these pleasant feelings have bodily sensations too. In some cultures, we call this a warm fuzzy, right? Like a little tingling across the shoulders, up the back of the neck, over the skull, right? This is the bodily sensations associated with the pleasant feelings that are about to arise. So you're going to need to have awareness of these, because what the Buddha teaches you to do is apply right effort to cut it off and let it go. Because that's the early warning system alerting you that you're about to get a conditioned feeling. If you don't cut it off as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling, right? We're not suppressing our feelings here. We're not repressing them. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it becomes a feeling. So essentially what the mind's going to do, I don't know if I can do this without a mic stand. I used to do this, okay? So what your mind's essentially doing is it's like, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. That's what the bodily sensations are, is I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you're like, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. The mind's about to form a feeling based on some condition. And you're like, no, I'm not going to let you do that, right? So you're cutting it off and letting it go. It's like preventing the water from ever coming into the boat. Because if you were taking a boat from like Canada to the UK, right, if you're out in the middle of the ocean, if you allow this water to come into the boat, you got a real problem to deal with. You got to get this water out of the boat. But if you can prevent the water from ever coming into the boat, hey, smooth sailing from Canada to the UK, right? So the same thing is true, that you're not interested in the mind becoming angry or becoming frustrated or agitated, because once it's in the mind, you got to get rid of it at that point. So if you can catch it as a bodily sensation and cut it off and let it go, you've just protected the mind. You've preserved your contentedness. You've guarded your mind. That's the way the Buddha describes it. He says to guard the mind with mindfulness, right? You would like to guard the mind with this awareness of mind. So when you see the bodily sensations, that's the early warning system alerting you that you're about to get angry, you're about to get frustrated, or you're about to get happy or excited. You cut that off and let it go. Don't allow your mind to form that conditioned feeling, okay? But between now and enlightenment, you're not going to be able to do that because your mind's not fully developed, right? You're going to miss it as a bodily sensation sometimes. So it's going to become a feeling. Well, try to cut it off there. If you didn't cut it off as a bodily sensation, cut it off as a feeling, right? Now just cut it off and let it go. Because if you don't cut it off and let it go as a feeling, now it's going to affect the condition of your mind. This is where your mind's going to be grumpy or irritable for like a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. Have you ever been agitated or grumpy for like a week or two? Of course you have, right? We all have at some point, right? Because that's what the unenlightened mind does, right? Because you didn't know to cut it off at the bodily sensations. You didn't have that wisdom. You didn't know that it was going to then become a feeling and you needed to cut it off there. And your mind was affected by this, and now the condition of your mind was generally grumpy or irritable or agitated for a few hours, a day, a week or two, or what have you. And then what happens is it feeds what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container, and in this example, it's ill will, right? We weren't born with ill will. We didn't have this deeply rooted container of ill will in our mind. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, right? That was one of the things that developed in our mind over time, because when we were born, we had craving and we had this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. And as we were aging, we had cravings. We were like, mommy, daddy, buy me chocolate and ice cream. I want chocolate and ice cream. And they're like, here, little David, you can have chocolate and ice cream. Ah, thank you, mommy. You're the best mommy ever. I like you so much, right? And then mommy and daddy did that for a while. But then at some time it was like, mommy, daddy, I want chocolate and ice cream. No, you can't have it. You're the worst mommy and daddy ever, right? That was our craving. We wanted this chocolate and ice cream to be permanent, and we were experiencing this impermanence. Our craving didn't get fulfilled, so our anger started arising. It was first a bodily sensation, and we didn't have the wisdom to cut it off and let it go. It then became a feeling. It affected the condition of the mind, where now for a few minutes or a few hours we were grumpy and irritable, and then it formed this mental object, this deeply rooted container in the mind. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is put a blockade at the bodily sensations where you're cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations, so that then all the while what you're going to be doing on this path is purifying your mind of these mental objects. So those 10 fetters that you guys are going to learn about in this course, those are all mental objects. Those are the deeply rooted containers that the mind has that have been formed over time that you need to uproot and purify the mind of. But you need to have awareness of them. Having awareness of the mental objects is to know the symptoms of them. So this is something that I teach as part of all the various programs. Or what are the symptoms of all of these things? Like, for example, conceit is a mental object. This is a deeply rooted container where the mind is measuring and comparing yourself, putting yourself above people or below people, looking down on people, considering yourself to be superior or inferior to others. This is part of the ego, right? So you're going to need to have awareness of that when your mind is doing it, because when your mind's doing that, you need to cut that off and let it go. Right? So there's these bodily sensations, feelings, condition of the mind, and mental objects that you need awareness of all 4 of these. And this takes time to be able to do this. And it's the next factor that's going to help you to be able to do that. But let me give you an example of right mindfulness and right effort in practice so you can see how this might look. Like, let's just say I was sitting on the sofa watching the news, and now I'm noticing this frustration coming up in the mind. That first, it starts as a bodily sensation because you have contact through the eyes and you see something you disagree with, and now there's this bodily sensation coming up. You're noticing the tightening in the chest, the tingling in the body, tightening in the throat, the heat in the face, the pressure in the skull. Well, what you would do is apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. Turn off the TV. Go for a walk. Redirect the mind. Don't allow your mind to just sit there and dwell in that discontentedness, because you're just allowing the mind to stay wired with this discontentedness, right? You're just allowing the mind to continue to stay wired that way, where it's like, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling, and you're like, all right, go ahead, get a conditioned feeling. Your mind's going to stay wired that way. But what you would like to do is where you notice that bodily sensation, you're like, nope, not going to let you do that. Turn off the news, go for a walk, redirect the mind to something else, right? Go for a bike ride, go wash your hands in the bathroom, go do something else. And now train your mind to not form that conditioned feeling, right? So this is the way it looks in practice, is you like to redirect the mind to something else. You're not suppressing your feelings here. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it actually becomes a feeling. So as I mentioned, you wouldn't be able to practice right effort without right mindfulness, but you wouldn't be able to practice right mindfulness without right concentration. This is what's going to help you to develop the mindfulness. Now, I don't typically read the words of the Buddha in other classes on this particular topic, but I will later when we talk about the jhanas. I'm going to teach you this because what the Buddha is teaching you is the jhanas here. Where he describes how to practice right concentration is in other parts of his teachings. But what he's describing in the Eightfold Path is he's describing the results of having practiced the Eightfold Path really well and put it all together. He teaches you this is what you're going to start experiencing. He's describing the jhanas, these enhanced qualities of mind that you guys are going to learn about in this course. But usually when I'm teaching the Eightfold Path, I don't read this for you because this is describing the byproduct or the results of practicing the Eightfold Path. In terms of how to practice right concentration, that's what I'm going to teach you here. Because the Buddha teaches this in other parts of his teachings. He teaches you to develop a meditation practice and to practice singleness of mind in day-to-day life. These are the two aspects of right concentration. So your breathing mindfulness meditation and your loving kindness meditation, that's helping you to develop right concentration, where you can have focus and clarity and singleness of mind. So you're going to need a breathing mindfulness meditation where you're gradually building up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. Now that can sound like a lot for some people. And wherever you are in your life, that's where you are. If you're doing 5 minutes of meditation per session, then just do 5 minutes to start with, but gradually expand that. But there's probably unbeneficial things in your life that you're doing right now that if you started clearing those things out, you'll have more time in your life to practice meditation. If you're searching social media and scrolling and watching YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video, then there's probably some of that you can cut back, right? You could probably just do that for 30 minutes or an hour per day rather than 3, 4, 5 hours a day, right? And that'll give you more time to do things like meditation. So gradually, slowly but surely, if you can build up your meditation practice, this would be practicing right concentration. Now with meditation, your frequency is more important than your duration, right? If it's a matter of one meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15 minutes, do the 2 for 15. That's going to be more impactful for your mind. And then gradually expand this over time. So I'm going to be teaching you these meditations as part of this particular course, but you'd like to gradually build this up. And this can take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this kind of frequency. So you're not in a race or a competition with anybody. This is your own journey to enlightenment. Just take your time, but don't be complacent, but don't crave it and chase after it either. Just gradually work towards it. The other part of right concentration is practicing singleness of mind. Okay, where you're just doing one thing at a time. Oftentimes we're taught to multitask. This came out in like the 1960s when computers came out. People were like, computers can multitask. Maybe we can too, right? So people started talking about multitasking. In a professional environment, this is, I think, pretty common. At least it was when I was in the professional world. People were always teaching you to multitask. Are they still doing it? Yeah, they're still teaching you to multitask. Well, your mind actually can't multitask. It's not possible for your mind to multitask. What you're actually doing is you're doing one thing for like 3 to 5 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to another thing for 3, 5, 8 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to another thing. So if I'm talking on the phone to my mom, I'm watching TV, and I'm eating a sandwich, I'm not actually doing all 3 of those things at the same time. I'm talking to my mom a little bit, I'm watching TV for a little bit, and I'm eating my sandwich a little bit. Right? And now this conversation that could have probably been 15 minutes, it ended up being 45 minutes or an hour because it took so long to have this conversation, right? And I might have said things that were unwise, and now I had to go back and clean it up. I'm like, Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I'm so sorry, right? Or maybe there were certain things that you agreed to with your mom. You told her you were going to take care of this, and then when you got off the phone, you completely forgot. It's like, Mom, I don't even remember what I was supposed to do for you. What was that I was supposed to do for you again? I can't even remember, right? So this multitasking that is supposed to promote more productivity is actually hindering you from being productive, because you're having to race around and race around and race around doing all these different individual tasks. And now you're actually taking longer. You're having to clean things up. And this is why you get home at the end of your workday and you're stressed and you have anxiety. Because if you've ever been to a racetrack where there's horses racing around the track, when they race around the track, they go to the barn, they can't calm down. They're like all hyped up. Right? It's the same thing with your mind. If you do that 8, 10, 12 hours a day where you're racing around trying to multitask, when you get home from work, you're going to find it very challenging to relax and be peaceful and joyful, because your mind's hyped up. So you're not going to be able to calm down. You're going to be stressed and having anxiety. So if you just do one thing at a time, that's what you would ultimately like to be doing, is do things single-threadedly, and you'll actually be more productive. This might sound strange to you, but you'll actually be more productive because you'll be able to handle each thing with your full wisdom. Because when you're talking to mom, you'll be able to bring forth right wisdom in your right speech. Right? How would you ever be able to practice right speech if you weren't focused when you're talking to mom, right? If you're trying to do all these other things, you're not going to be able to bring forth right speech and have a wonderful relationship with mom. So you like to just do one thing at a time. The way this would look is, say you're in a business meeting, and like 3 months from now, you're going to Thailand and you're like, man, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait, right? And maybe you're in a livelihood that you don't really particularly care for, right? Like maybe your mind's wandering and thinking about something else. You need to have your mindfulness, your awareness of mind, to see that your mind's wandering and cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to what it is. Handle your business meeting. It's not time to go to Thailand yet. Handle the business meeting. Do really well with that. Or maybe you're washing dishes and your mind's wandering, and next thing you know, you cut yourself with a knife when you're washing dishes because you weren't focused on the task at hand, which is washing dishes. So if you notice your mind's wandering while you're washing dishes, cut that off and let it go. Bring the mind back to washing dishes. Just do one thing at a time. The way that I think about this is that if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you were grinding this steel rod back and forth on this piece of wood, initially when you do this, the steel rod's going to be bouncing around quite a bit because there's no groove there yet, right? So the mind's going to be bouncing around quite a bit at first. But when you start stroking this back and forth on the wood, more and more you're going to get a groove here. And it's going to occasionally pop out. But when it does, you're going to notice it and you're going to bring it right back. But eventually, if you grind that steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get such a deep groove that it'll never pop out. That your steel rod is just going to stay in that groove. It's the same thing with your mind. That if you practice singleness of mind more and more and more, your mind's going to be so focused and so concentrated, it'll never pop out. You're just always going to be focused and concentrated when you're talking with other people or you're in a business meeting. So initially, it's going to bounce around, but if you apply right effort and right mindfulness, you'll notice when it's popping out and you'll be able to apply right effort to bring it back. And now more and more, your mind will just be focused and concentrated all the time. And it's the meditation that's going to help you to do that. Because when you're focused on the breath, you're practicing right concentration there. And when your mind moves off the breath, you're noticing that. That's your mindfulness. And now you're applying right effort to bring it back, right? That's the right concentration, right mindfulness, and right effort all coming together, all in one practice. By focusing on the breath, you're developing right concentration. It moves off the breath. That's your mindfulness, that you're aware that that's happened. And now you apply right effort to bring it back. And now you're exercising your mind. That's essentially what meditation is, where you're exercising the mind. It's like taking it to the gym. And just like you go to the gym and you exercise the body, you can exercise the mind, and now it'll be nice and strong for you in your day-to-day life. So in meditation, you're cutting off everything and anything that comes up. Anything. Even if you think about taking your mom out to lunch or taking her out to dinner, you just cut it off because you're in meditation. But in your day-to-day life, you only cut off the unwholesome things. So if you're thinking about taking your mom out to dinner or taking her out to lunch or giving her a call to see how she's doing, no need to cut that off in daily life. Go ahead. Go forward if you like. But if you're thinking about punching your boss in the face, cut that off, right? And you're going to have trouble if you do that, right? Cut that off and let it go. It's unwholesome, right? So you're training your mind in one way, and then you're exercising the mind in one way and training it, and then in daily life, you're doing something completely different. It's just like a professional athlete, right? If I was like a pole vaulter, I might go into the gym and I do like weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training, but then my sport looks completely different than what I was doing in the gym, right? So this is the same kind of thing. You're training your mind in one way because you're trying to train your mind to be concentrated, to have that mindfulness or awareness of mind, and to be able to cut off and let go and bring the mind back to the breath. And now in daily life, you just cut off the unwholesome things. You don't have to cut off the wholesome things. Okay, so this is right concentration. All right, so just as a little summary, right effort is taking the initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. Right mindfulness is awareness of mind with the 4 foundations of mindfulness. You have that awareness of mind, but then getting the awareness of bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. And knowing that you're going to need to apply the effort to cut off and let go at the bodily sensations and catching that sooner and sooner. And that's where your meditation comes in. Your meditation is helping you to be able to do that, where you can notice that the mind has moved off the breath and you can cut that off and let it go. So the goal of that meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal of that meditation is to notice them sooner and sooner and cut it off and let it go easier and easier. And that's going to help you in your day-to-day life. Okay, so your right concentration is to develop your meditation practice and your singleness of mind. And eventually you're going to start experiencing the jhanas, which are these enhanced qualities of mind. If you put the Eightfold Path together for multiple months, for some people it's going to be years, that you'll start experiencing these jhanas, these enhanced qualities. And we're going to talk about them tomorrow so that you know that your mind's in those jhanas and moving through those phases. Because at that point, it's like confirmation for you that you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well. And at that point, you're going to start pivoting and you're going to start focusing more on the 10 fetters because you know you got the Eightfold Path well developed. So this is the mental discipline section. So we talked about wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. Do you guys have any questions on any of this? John, you have a question? Mm-hmm.
So is the right effort, that's the cutting off action? Or is that also like the renunciation? Maybe I don't know if I'm borrowing or switching to.
I didn't hear the second part.
So is the right effort, because you were mentioning a lot.
Mm-hmm. Cutting off and letting go. That's right effort.
Is that also like the renunciation? Or maybe it's...
The intention of renunciation is just having the thinking or the thought that you would like to let these things go. But then the actual action to do it is the right effort. That's where you're actually doing it. But the right intention is to have the thinking or the thought that, I'm not doing things perfectly in this world. There are certain things that I'm holding on to that I need to let go of, certain unwholesome things, certain false beliefs and opinions. So right intention is having the intention or the thinking or the thought that, hey, I need to do some improvement here and I need to let these things go. And now the right effort is where you're actually doing the work to let it go.
And I think you were mentioning like the 4 foundations. It's like a life cycle.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it's, when you, let's say you let the body, you don't listen to the body, you let the emotions and the feelings arise. Is that also like another, you were mentioning that whole thing around the groove with the, is that also like a unwholesome way that our minds are being trained in unwholesome states?
Yeah, so the right mindfulness, those 4 foundations, it's essentially showing you the life cycle that discontentedness is going to take. So when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you're going to experience some contact. Like let's just say you're sitting at a traffic light and somebody pulls up to you with some music and they're playing music in their car and you hear it through your ears. And that's music that you listen to. I don't know, maybe rap, hip hop, classical, I don't know what you listen to, heavy metal, right? Whatever you listen to, you're like, yeah, man, that's my jam. All right, let's go. You're like so happy because you hear that music, that sound going in your ear. It's triggering your craving. Your mind's getting what you want, which is this agreeable contact. And you're so excited and happy about that, right? So that's going to trigger the craving. And there were some bodily sensations, some tingling across the shoulders, up the back of the neck, over the head. That's the bodily sensations associated with that, right? And now there's the feeling in the mind where the mind's now excited. Then it's going to affect the condition of your mind. More long term, you're going to have this uplifted aspect of your mind, and then it's forming this mental object. In this case, it's called central desire, right? But now the problem with that is that you'll go up to the next traffic light and somebody else will pull up to you with some different type of music that you don't particularly care for because you have a craving in your mind for, I don't know what kind of music you like, but let's just call it rap or hip hop. And now all of a sudden someone's playing some heavy metal music, right? And now you hear that coming through your ears. And now maybe you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed. What's happening there is there's a sound going into your ear. It's triggering your craving or your central desire. It's triggering that. And now before that feeling comes into the mind of the anger and frustration, there's bodily sensations that's occurring first. And those bodily sensations are the early warning system alerting you, hey, you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. And what the Buddha is teaching you to do is apply right effort to cut it off and let it go right there. Because if you allow the mind to continue to stay wired where it's forming these conditioned feelings, then it's just going to keep doing that the whole rest of your life. So you're going to need to get to the point where you're noticing the bodily sensations that are prior to the feeling every single time. And it can take a few years to even get to that point, but that's what you would ultimately like to be able to get to, where you can notice that sooner and sooner and sooner, and now cut it off and let it go. And eventually your mind gets to the point where you keep yanking it back and yanking it back and yanking it back, that it never pulls anymore. It's kind of like if there was animals tied with a rope to a post or a pillar. Every time they pull, they get yanked back, and they get yanked back, and they get yanked back. Eventually, those animals are going to figure out that they're tied to that post, and they're just going to sit down by the post, and they're not going to pull and tug any longer. So your mind's the same way. Every time you see it longing, yearning, and craving, and pulling towards something, if you yank it back, over time, it won't pull anymore. It'll just be still and calm and steady and peaceful and joyful because it's not pulling any longer. So that right mindfulness is teaching you this life cycle that you're going to experience where there's bodily sensations, there's feelings, there's the condition of the mind, and then there's the mental objects, so that now you can transform this when you're noticing that this is occurring. Does that help you? Yeah? Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that before instead of feeling it externally and you cut it off, I feel sometimes it originates in my mind where, for example, when I remember something in the past from the past, mm-hmm. and it goes first, like comes to my mind, and then it's a feeling that is developed, and then it doesn't have that order. The order that you're explaining is when something external comes to me, and then I cut it up. But then this is the opposite.
Yeah, there's 6 sense bases. Mm-hmm. There's the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. So in the present moment, I'll use this mind sense base. In the present moment, you could be thinking about something that happened in the past that was either pleasurable or painful. And now in the present moment, you're experiencing feelings based on that. Or it could be something that you're thinking about in the future, pleasurable or painful. And now in the present moment, you're experiencing pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. So this is happening within the mind. You haven't had any contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, but it's just the mind itself. So now that's still triggering a craving, and there's going to be bodily sensations first. Before you get the feeling, there's going to be some bodily sensation. So it's really the mind that's triggering all of this, but it's the bodily sensations that are first in all these situations. It's going to happen. They might be happening so quick right now that you don't even notice it, right? Someone who's like got road rage, if you guys know road rage, they go from like 0 to 100 without even thinking about it. Right? Like they're just completely driving down the road, minding their own business. And next thing you know, they're like on scale 1,000 anger, right? Ready to shoot somebody or beat up somebody with a baseball bat. There was bodily sensations, but it went past so quick, they didn't even know that it was there. And then their mind got that feeling, and now their condition of their mind is just so enraged, right? So when you're training your mind with this breathing mindfulness meditation and you're practicing singleness of mind, it's going to slow the mind down. So you'll have more time to be able to notice these bodily sensations. I noticed some of them for as long as about 8 to 10 seconds that they were there. But early on in my practice, it was like 1 second or half a second. But then it just kept getting longer and longer and longer to give you more and more time to cut it off and let it go. And eventually, when you cut it off and let it go enough, anger will never arise. By the time you get to enlightenment, no matter what you're experiencing, whether it's rap, hip hop, heavy metal music, whatever, you can be completely peaceful no matter what you hear, right? Because you're not craving for it to be one way or the other. This is what the Buddha calls agreeable and disagreeable contact, or favorable and unfavorable contact. The only reason why the mind has that is because of craving. When you get rid of craving, it's just contact. It's not favorable or unfavorable or agreeable or disagreeable. It's just contact. It's just music. It's impermanent. This person is going to drive away in about 3 minutes. Why do I need to be angry just because they're playing some music that I don't tend to listen to? Hey, they're having fun. Have fun, right? So once you get rid of this, where you no longer allow the mind to form conditioned feelings, there's no more anger that is arising up in the mind because you've gotten rid of the causes and conditions that are producing it. The mind is now unconditioned. It's purified. It no longer experiences this favoring and opposing or agreeable or disagreeable contact. It's just contact. And now your mind's just peaceful all the time.
Okay, and why is it that my mind keeps bringing those unpleasant feelings from the past? Mm-hmm. Is there a craving there for reviving those moments?
It's clinging. So there's two things. I usually describe it as craving, desire, attachment, clinging once. It's really two things. But when I talk about it in the early stages like this, I just call it all one thing. So what's happening is the mind will crave and long and yearn for something, and then it will cling and hold on to it. So for example, at one time, you were probably longing, yearning for a husband, right? And you were longing, yearning for one. And then once you got one, you clung to it and held on to it, right? So that's the two different things that the mind's doing, is this craving and then it's clinging, right? So when you have certain experiences from the past, you will cling to those. So like say I walk down the street and I get beat up by a person in a green jacket. Well, now that was such a traumatic experience for me. Now my mind clings to this experience, and I think everybody with a green jacket is going to beat me up. And now whenever I see someone with a green jacket, I get scared, right? This is because the mind's clinging. It's not the craving, it's the clinging, right? The craving is I want to be safe all the time, and I don't want any harm to come to this body. I want this body to be permanently comfortable. But now, because of this experience I had, I'm clinging to it, and now I keep re-experiencing that over and over and over again. People call it PTSD, and they think that it's permanent, but it's not. It's impermanent. You can train your mind to let this go, and then you don't have that PTSD anymore. But people think that it's a biological thing, but it's really not. It's just an untrained mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Going back to the music in the car example that you were giving. So the goal is not necessarily if there's a car that's playing music I like and I get excited and I dance to it, that's okay. But the problem is that if I expect the car that pulls up to play music I like every time, and then now I'm getting frustrated when it doesn't happen, I guess I'm kind of confused. Like, am I supposed to cut off as well my excitement, like when I hear music I like? Because those are pleasant feelings. Or is it like the attachment that I have to it?
Yeah, you're cutting off the conditioned pleasant feelings. What you need to be able to do is learn how to enjoy the music without conditioned pleasant feelings. And this is very foreign for people when they're first learning about it, because they're only used to excitement, and they're used to, oh my goodness, that's my music, all right, let's go, come on. They don't understand how to enjoy something without a conditioned pleasant feeling. So if you're noticing excitement, that is a conditioned pleasant feeling. So like, I'll give you another example. Like, say, like sometimes parents come home from work and their children get so excited. Yay, mommy and daddy's home. This is so fun. Mommy's home, daddy's home, right? But then when mommy and daddy go on a business trip for 2 weeks, they feel lonely, they're bored, they're missing mommy and daddy because they were so excited when mommy and daddy come home that then when they're gone, they feel lonely or bored, or they're missing their mom and dad. So that's the problem, that if you allow the mind to get excited, then it's also going to get these painful feelings as well. So there is this middle way that the mind isn't familiar with, is learning how to enjoy something without a conditioned pleasant feeling. So I'm thoroughly enjoying our conversation and spending time together with all of you, but I'm not clinging to it because I know it's going to come to an end, and then we just move on and we just go do the next thing, right? But if you're clinging to this experience of the music or mommy and daddy's there and you get so excited and you're clinging to it, then when it's over, it's like, it's over. I wanted that to last longer, right? So the mind needs to get to a point where it's not clinging to the experience, wanting it to keep lasting longer and longer and longer and longer, right? And that's what will help you to do that, is when you're noticing the bodily sensations with excitement coming up, you're like, no, I'm not going to let you get excited, but I can still enjoy it. Yeah, I can still have fun, but I'm not going to allow the mind to get that conditioned pleasant feeling where it's staying wired that way. And you need to experience that a few times so you can see how the mind's capable of doing this, because most people don't even realize that the mind is capable of doing this.
Yeah, now I want to kind of see the difference, but I guess I've never been mindful of the difference between like excitement and then like also enjoying something. So.
Yeah. Have you ever had like a piece of chocolate cake and you're like, wow, this is a really good piece of chocolate cake. But if you went there and the restaurant didn't have your chocolate cake, you'd be like, that's fine too. I'm fine without the chocolate cake. But when I'm eating it, wow, it tastes really good. Right? So that might be something that you've had. Whereas if you're eating the chocolate cake and you get so excited about it, then when you come tomorrow and they don't have your chocolate cake, you'll be upset or you'll be frustrated. But if you can enjoy the chocolate cake in the present moment, be like, wow, this tastes really, really great, but you know that this is an impermanent situation, that they're not going to always have your chocolate cake. So when you come back tomorrow and they don't have your chocolate cake, it's like, oh, no worries. Do you have apple pie? Oh, you don't have that either? How about some fruit? Oh, you don't have that either? Okay, no worries. I don't need dessert. I'll just eat this food right here. Right? You can just maintain your contentedness. Whereas if you can only be enjoying something and you can only be happy or excited when you get your chocolate cake is impermanent. So now when you don't have it, that's where the painful feelings will come in. So you need to learn how to just enjoy eating the chocolate cake, but understand it's impermanent, and don't allow the mind to get those excited feelings. Because when you allow the mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting right around the corner. And sometimes these things are spread out so far from each other that you don't even realize what's occurring. Like if you get so excited with this brand new job that you just got, right? If there's some brand new job that somebody just got, they could get so excited about it. Well, now 5 years later, when the company goes out of business and they have to fire everybody, you'll be angry, you'll be frustrated. And you don't realize it's from 5 years ago when you allowed the mind to get so excited with this brand new job, that it's from that. It's that craving that got triggered 5 years ago that you got so excited that now when you're losing your job, you feel angry or frustrated. So you need to be able to see this correlation. And this is what a Buddha figures out. He figures it out by himself, and then he teaches it to other people to let other people understand what's going on in your mind. Because the unenlightened mind with a lack of wisdom doesn't even realize that this is even occurring. But once you understand that it's occurring and you start looking in your life, you'll start seeing exactly how this is occurring. And then you'll be like, wow, why would I ever let my mind get conditioned pleasant feelings if I know the painful ones are waiting right around the corner? So you learn to cut those off and cut those off and cut those off. And now instead of just being happy and excited when you get what you want, you're happy and excited all the time. Or not excited, but you're happy all the time. You're just joyful and cheerful all the time, because there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to get that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
if a person can have the freedom to choose either stay in Thailand to practice mindfulness for like 1 or 2 years, or he can choose to stay in maybe a stressful environment, working environment to continue the normal daily life. If a person can choose between these two scenarios, like he has the financial freedom and everything, what would be he decide?
Each person has to decide for themselves because there's so many unique variables that there's not just one right answer. We were kind of talking about this earlier, but you weren't here, is that, you know, the teachings of the Buddha aren't going to tell you like exactly what to do in any given situation. You've got to have enough wisdom to figure this out for yourself. So the Buddha does give you guidance on how to select a place to live, because that's what you're asking about. And I can share that with you if you'd like. Would you like to know that? Okay, so he gives these 4 scenarios. He says that if you are living in a place where you can't get your basic necessities met in order to sustain your life, and you can't train your mind, he says you should leave that place right away, essentially immediately, right? Because you can't get your basic necessities and you can't train your mind. He says if you're living in a place where you can get your basic necessities, but you can't train your mind, he says you should leave that place at your next earliest convenience, right? If you're at a place where you can get your basic necessities, or your basic necessities aren't easily being met, but you can train your mind, he says you can stay at this place for a little while, right? Because you can still train your mind. But he says if you can get to a place where all your basic necessities are being met and you can train your mind, he says you can stay at this place for the rest of your life, essentially, right? So for me, that's Thailand, right? I can easily get my basic necessities met, and I was able to train my mind. So that was Thailand for me. But for other people, it could be somewhere else. They might not be able to get their basic necessities met here if they can't work and they can't have a job and these kinds of things. So each individual needs to use these scenarios and be able to see where are they in life. Because in these 4 scenarios, what the Buddha is doing is he's prioritizing the development of your mind. What he says is, you know, your life isn't just about getting your basic necessities met, because if you're getting your basic necessities met and you can't train your mind, he says leave that place at your next earliest convenience, right? Because that's not the priority. But if you're at a place where you're kind of getting your basic necessities met, but you're able to train your mind, he's like, you can stay at that place for a while, right? Because that's the priority, is to train your mind. Because if you're not training your mind, it doesn't matter what else is going on in the world, nothing's going to be right. Because your mind is like the CPU of your computer, and everything's going through your mind. So if you're not training your mind, it doesn't really matter that you're able to get food and water and clothing and shelter and medical care and all these kinds of things, because your life is not improving because you're not training your mind. So maybe you can use that to make a decision for yourself of what would be wise, prioritizing the development of your mind and the training of your mind.
Thank you. And how do you tell if you're able to train your mind in this place? For example, if you're like Singapore, you have a lot of competitive people around you, and you need to be in this business which is running very still be able to train your mind if you're capable. And I think some people can still train their mind. So is it considered as the person's problem, or is it the environment's?
The problem isn't the environment, because no matter what environment you're in, if your mind is trained, you would be able to function just fine. So the way that you'll know if you're training your mind or not is, do you have access to the original words of the Buddha? Do you have regular access to classes and courses and retreats? Do you have access to a teacher? Are you able to do meditation? Have you organized your life in such a way that you can regularly meditate and get help from somebody to actively be working on the path, right? So you could do that from Singapore, Malaysia, New York, any of these places, because nowadays we have live stream. Like right now I'm live streaming all over the world, so people could easily get access to this. There's recordings on videos and podcasts and books, and people can meet with me privately through Zoom. So the physical location isn't necessarily what matters. What matters is that you have access to the teachings. And if you can live in a place like Singapore or Malaysia or New York, and you're able to make money there, and that's the place where you can get your basic necessities met, well, now you just need to figure out a way to bring the teachings into your life, which is what I've done for people, is I've removed that barrier so that they're able to then bring the teachings into their life. And then when you're in an environment where people are very competitive or cutthroat, or they're all clamoring to get to the top, you just decide that you're not going to subscribe to that. You unsubscribe, you opt out, right? So even though other people are chasing this magical money and having this big full bank account, and they think that that's what's going to lead to their happiness, if you understand the truth that that's not what leads to happiness, then you can just gradually make your way through wise decision makings towards certain goals, objectives, or interests, and you don't have to subscribe to this cutthroat, competitive world of people constantly wanting more and more and more and more and more. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not the people or the environment, it's your wisdom to decide to go forward in life wisely. Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you have a question, Pam? I saw you got a mic earlier.
I was wondering, could you give us examples of positive mental objects?
Yeah, so when we talk about the mental objects as part of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, we're talking about the 10 fetters there, because that's what you're going to need to have awareness of in order to transform your mind and purify your mind. So that word mental object is mostly being used for unwholesome qualities, but there are some places in the teachings of the Buddha where he does use it for other things too. Like he'll even use it for like a thought or idea. He will call it a mental object, or at least that's the way we're translating it, is as a mental object. A thought or idea. Sometimes the way we're translating it, will use the word mental object in that situation. I'd say 80, 90, even 95% of the time it's being used as unwholesome qualities of the 10 fetters, but you'll see rare occasions where he's using it in other ways. And in some cases he uses it for wholesome things too. So like loving kindness would be a wholesome mental object, or compassion, or sympathetic joy, or equanimity, or concentration, or mindfulness itself is also a wholesome mental object or mental quality. So you could think about a mental object like a mental state. And it can be either positive or negative, or wholesome or unwholesome, but we generally refer to it as the unwholesome because that's what you're working to purify. And one of the ways you're purifying is you're getting rid of the unwholesome and you're bringing in the wholesome. That's how you're getting to the wholesome qualities in the mind. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's 3:15. It's been a full day. You guys had lots of questions, and what I usually do, my method of teaching is I just honor whatever questions you have, whatever discussion you have. I just let the class go wherever it needs to go. Even though I plan to talk about the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots, I'll actually be able to integrate that in other parts of the course. I was just interested in making sure you guys got what you needed here with the Eightfold Path. So I'm glad we spent this time to be able to make sure you got all your questions answered. So tomorrow we're going to be moving into more content. What I'm going to be sharing with you guys in the morning, let me go past this. What I'm going to be sharing with you guys in the morning is I'm going to be teaching you loving kindness meditation. This is what's going to eliminate your anger, your hatred, and your ill will. How would you ever be able to speak with a mind of loving kindness if you didn't have a tool or technique to be able to cultivate it in the mind? So I'm going to be teaching you guys that. Then I'm going to be teaching you guys how to understand and experience the jhanas, these preliminary phases that you're going to be experiencing as the mind goes through practicing the Eightfold Path. It's going to develop these enhanced qualities. So I'm going to teach you guys what that is, so you'll know what it is, and you'll know that you're actually experiencing them when you're experiencing them. Then I'm going to teach you guys about the 4 stages of enlightenment, what those 4 stages are, and how your mind actually moves through them. Then when we come back from lunch, we're going to do breathing mindfulness meditation together. Then I'm going to teach you about the 10 fetters and what those are. I'm going to talk about each one of them individually and what the symptoms of these are. And I'll talk about a little bit of the solutions with some of them, but we're going to focus more so on what the symptoms are so that you can eradicate those. The Eightfold Path is going to help you with that, but you need to first understand what they are. So we're going to talk about some of the solutions, but not a super amount of detail about the solutions, because that's where the Eightfold Path comes in. But there's a retreat that I teach each August, which I spend like an hour to an hour and a half on each fetter, explaining the symptom or explaining what it is, the symptoms of it, how to eliminate, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. But at this point, focusing more on the symptoms is best. So this is our plan for tomorrow. So I'd like to just thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for everything, your interest to learn the teachings. And perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class, okay? Sawadee Kap. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee Kap. I'm going to try to get a new mic stand.